In today's show, we're looking ahead to the action for Friday in the league. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. 10 games on Friday. Let's talk about them right now. First one of those games, the Pelicans and the 76ers. Brandon Ingram is out. Is it time? James Johnson, is he going to be back starting? Do they put Najee Marshall in? Regardless, both Marshall and Johnson should see an uptick in their roles and minutes with Ingram out. Johnson is a better fantasy player per minute than Marshall, so he's probably going to be more value there. But again, there's 10 games on. Can you actually afford to add him? Does it make sense to add him? But I am going to watch to see how he plays and see how Marshall looks. For the Sixers, Seth Curry has been playing much better of late. The issue again we have here is the limited roster spots available on Friday, and will the Sixers just kick their ass and limit his playing time, because that's been a problem at times over the last couple of weeks. Well, the Painter Matisse Thybulle, you want defensive stats, you want steals, you want blocks, especially blocks out of a guard. There is literally no better player than Thybulle to do that, and he is going to be an option for us. So let's see how good he looks in this game. The next game is the Celtics and the Bulls. Evan Fournier playing better at the moment. Jaylen Brown is out again, so Fournier will get another start. He'll get his minutes boosted once more, and hopefully he can maintain the level of form he's had in the last two games. Well, Marcus Smart shot pretty poorly in the last one for Boston. I'd like to see him do a little bit better, but I also just like watching Smart play. He's continually one of the most underrated fantasy players out there. Continually outperforms ADP almost every season that happens, even this season despite a slow start to the year. For the Bulls, Kobe White did maintain his starting position next to Zach LaVine on Thursday. He played all right. Now, whether he does the same thing against the Celtics remains to be seen. He probably will, but I want to see how he looks. Does he start again? And do the minutes reflect being a starter or not? Daniel Tice put up a big performance in Thursday's game for the Bulls against the Hornets. Now he faces his former team. He'll start next to Nikola Vucevic again, almost 100% certain that's going to happen, but can he string together a couple of strong performances? The Wolves and the Heat. Jaden McDaniels is out. He's attending a funeral. So will they go with Juancho Hernangomez or will they go with Jared Vanderbilt as the starter? Regardless, both of those guys are going to have to see extra minutes. Maybe they play Naz Reid a little bit there as well. Vanderbilt's minutes have been pushing up. So if you're looking for some under-the-radar fantasy stats, blocks, steals, rebounds, high field goal percentage, Vanderbilt is going to see an increase in those numbers here. And also D'Angelo Russell, who played 37 minutes in his first start post-injury. You'd imagine he starts again. The Russell-Edwards-Towns mix worked pretty well in that matchup against the Grizzlies, but I am still wanting to see it for more than one game before we make a judgment on how that all looks. For the Heat, Duncan Robinson, I don't really... there's not huge amounts that we want to look at with this team. We do want to know the status of guys like Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler, who are questionable heading into this one. And does that allow Robinson to put up some bigger numbers? Because it did happen in the last game, but prior to that, he'd been pretty poor. Well, Trevor Ariza is a very, very strong 14-team league guy, and he can actually be a 12-team league option, especially if you're looking for steals and threes. And if Butler is out, it does help him just slightly. The Rockets and the Bucks, man, Houston, Jesus Christ, their roster is in absolute turmoil. We don't know if Jayshawn Tate or Christian Wood are playing. They're pretty big names. Kelly Olynyk is also pretty big names. Big names in the context of the Rockets at the moment. Kelly Olynyk is also questionable. DJ Augustin is questionable. But House is out, Brown is out, Gordon's out, Wilson's out, Nwaba's out, Porter's out, and Avery Bradley's out. So KJ Martin is going to play a huge role. Whether he starts or comes off the bench, it doesn't matter. He's in for a really, really big performance, and it could be a big rest of season. The problem is that all these blokes, we don't know if they're out for the year or if they're going to be back in one or two games. So that's a problem. Armani Brooks has another opportunity to start with Bradley and Porter out. He probably has to start at point guard, to be honest, unless they put Tate there. but Brooks has an opportunity. He's going to jack up shots. He's probably going to hurt your field goal percentage, but he's in a really, really solid spot for a role. For the Bucks, Drew Holiday, really liked what he did last game. Now, Chris Middleton is off the injury report, so that does reduce Holiday's output, but let's see how he goes. In a game where, honestly, these guys could be sat down really early, in a game that becomes a huge blowout, while PJ Tucker is he's probable actually, so he should be ready to go. That obviously impacts the value of Bob Portis, but again, all these games are going to be, just watch out for the Bucks and resting players against poor opponents. The Magic and the Hornets, RJ Hampton for me, he's the guy we want to watch. Big minutes, more minutes than Cole Anthony in the last 2 games. Now, I think last game, I don't want to read too much into that because Anthony copped that massive whack to the head and that cost him some playing time. But Hampton's a 12-team league at this point to see how it goes. While Mo Wagner will get another start at power forward. He'll play pretty good minutes and he's probably worth a look as a 12-team league player. For the Hornets, Jalen McDaniels did indeed start over Caleb Martin on Thursday. Both of their numbers weren't particularly great, but I do think that Jalen does have 12-team league appeal for the rest of the way here, while Caleb is probably more of a streamer for some points and from some steals. But let's watch how those two interact in this game. Malik Monk was great on Thursday as well. The Cavs and the Mavs, the Discman, C.D. Osman. He'll get another start almost undoubtedly with Darius Garland sidelined, and he's going to provide some value. What will the Isaac Okoro roller coaster look like? Can he get back and at least score 10 points? I don't think he's a must-roster player by any means. While Isaiah Hartenstein, just give the guy 30 minutes. I just want to see what happens. I want to see what he does. It's not going to happen here because Jared Allen's playing, but he should get the bulk of those minutes as the backup. While for the Mavs, it's a back-to-back for them. Tim Hardaway is playing well at the moment. I don't have the expectation that Kristaps Porzingis or Maxi Kleber are going to play in this game. So Hardaway's value will be up, as will Dwight Powell's, and he can be a solid source of big man numbers, Big Dwighty. The Nuggets and the Jazz, well, we know everyone's out basically for Denver. No Dozier, no Barton Will Barton, no Monty Morris. So Austin Rivers is in line for big minutes once again. He put up a really good performance. I don't buy the shooting in that game against the Knicks from Rivers, but the minutes are fine. They're absolutely going to be through the roof. You can also look at Big Shaq Harrison.
Big Shaq.
As a guy that's going to get extra minutes. And I think we can also look at Aaron Gordon as a player who's going to let us down, because that's basically what's happened every single game. No matter who's in or who's out, Gordon seems to underperform in terms of fantasy production for Denver. Maybe he turns it around. I wouldn't bank on it. For the Jazz, no Conley, no Mitchell, so Joe Ingles is going to have that elevated role. Pretty solid performances of late for Jingle and Joe, while Rudy Gobert, love what he's doing at the moment, really putting up some huge numbers, even in limited playing time. And I don't think this one will be a limited playing time one, but this is a challenge for him up against Jokic, much like it's a challenge for Jokic up against Gobert. Next game, Knicks and Suns, Rowan Barrett. Can we get him to put it together in a game? He's had some ups and downs with poor percentages or lack of defensive stats. He's been much improved this season for sure, but still always has these little things that do let you down a little bit. And they are without, in this game, Emmanuel Quickley and Alec Burks. They're both doubtful. So Barrett's probably see a little bit of a larger role, and Derrick Rose is almost definitely going to see a larger role. Unfortunately, it means that Alfred Payton is also going to see a somewhat larger role. For the Suns, Jay Crowder is out again. Cam Johnson is questionable with a wrist injury. Maybe that's why he's been shooting so horrendously. I'd like to see him do something to restore some level of confidence because he's been pretty poor. While Chris Paul didn't have the greatest game last game, he's been really solid this year. I think what got in these fake MVP debates that people are having, we're talking about Chris Paul, they realized that he didn't play particularly well to start the season. Like, he just wasn't that good to start the year, and those of us in fantasy will be well aware of that. His numbers were way down to begin the year. Now, he's playing quite well now, but he still has the occasional off game. I don't think this will be it for Chris Paul, but he's a guy that's obviously returning some pretty strong fantasy numbers. The Spurs and the Kings, Jakob Poeltl, been really poor the last couple of games. If we see the 3-center platoon, if he plays 20 minutes again in this one, he's a drop, but I'd like to see it one more game. And then Patty Mills, with the absence of Derek White. Mills should be able to come in and score and hit some threes, but there are going to be games where they just limit him for some reason. While the Kings, no Halliburton, no Fox. So Delon Wright is going to put up absolutely monster numbers. If for some reason your league and you're still active and he's on the waiver wire, mate, I don't know what you're waiting for. Going at him. While Marvin Bagley had that really empty 30 and 10 double-double last game, we just need him to do some other things to become a real category league force. He just isn't there yet, of course. And hopefully with some consistency, because good game, bad game, good game so far. Let's hope it's not another bad one. The Lakers and the Blazers are back-to-back for the Lakers. There'll be no LeBron. There'll be no Schroeder. There'll be no Taylor Horton-Tucker in this one. So Alex Caruso is going to get a boost in his value, as will KCP. Caruso does have some streaming value, while Andre Drummond, I don't know, man. I just want to see, because I'm continually evaluating how they're using that center rotation. We still have to hold Drummo in fantasy leagues, but it's obviously been disappointing. While the Blazers, Yusuf Nurkic, love what this guy's doing. Real opportunity to destroy Drummond in this game. And hopefully it stays close enough for him to get 30 minutes. While Carmelo Anthony, if you're looking for points and for some threes, Melo is a good stream option. Now, he's not a great must-roster player, of course, but he does provide value in those two categories. For streamers, Mo Wagner, KJ Martin, Daquan Jeffries in Houston, Trevor Ariza, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And then for points leagues, we're looking at Bumba, KJ Martin, RJ Hampton, Jalen McDaniels, and Flaming Mo Wagner. Guys, that'll do it for me today. Don't forget, follow along Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on Odyssey. Well, on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit the thumbs up, hit the notification bell. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.